getting the answer not just to know the answer, but as an answer as a way to beget the next question. So this is going to be a funny, self-referential, almost inside joke, but how I'm going to ask you the question, how do we ask a better question? Greetings and welcome back to the Kiss My Aesthetic podcast. I'm so excited to have Vivi on the podcast today, fellow podcaster herself. We just met in the green room 10 minutes ago, but we have so much to talk about. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
This is going to be wonderful. But for anyone who doesn't know you yet, hasn't had the pleasure, can you tell us who you are, what you do, and who you help?
Oh, wow. That's like the $1 million question. So I'm Chedva Lumir. A lot of people know me as Vivi. It really depends on when in my life we've met and what's your Hebrew proficiency. I grew up between New York and Israel. I'm the CEO and founder of Consider. I've been an entrepreneur for over 18 years now, which makes me feel very old. I'm also the mom to Hanoch, who's just become 19, which helps me do the math around how long I've been an entrepreneur. And I help founders, creatives, solopreneurs, as well as tech organizations and startups with strategy, especially question-led strategy and introspection-led strategy around their business strategy in general, who they are as leaders, and fun stuff like positioning, business plans, etc.
And we actually have something in common in that because I also started my business as a 21-year-old person. So talk to me about the beginning of this. Did you know that this is where you were going to end up? We talked a little bit about you working in tech and then kind of bouncing around, but how has your whole story led you to here? Again, another $1 million question. I'm just hitting you straight off the bat.
No, great question. I love this. Speaking of introspection, right?
Yes, no
So no, I did not have any clue I'd end up here. I started out as a translator. I think one thing that I did know from the beginning was I had a very strong hunch that I was built to be an entrepreneur. I really felt very comfortable in it. My dad wasn't an entrepreneur in the sense of he didn't start anything new, but he did work in the family business that existed for over 100 years. So there was the sense of ownership there and the sense of waking up to work very early, but very excited because you really feel like this is a big part of your life and not just like something very specific. So I think that really was one of those things that fueled it. I also grew up in the ultra-Orthodox community where women didn't work outside of the house. So it was a little bit of a feminist reaction on my side. And I started as a fiction and TV subtitler and translator. It was really fun for a bookworm and a nerd. And my career today is thanks to me just blogging on the side. You probably remember, the early 2000s to early 2010s. Blogging was just everything before Instagram and Pinterest, which was everything. It was also so easy to start and to find like-minded people and your community. And I had at least 10 different blogs. My blog that really gained some traction was an interior design blog just because I was decorating the apartment we were moving into and there was no Pinterest yet. So that's where I kept my inspiration.
Oh my gosh.
And while I was doing that and gaining readership, brands and just solopreneur, designers started approaching me and saying, hey, we see what you're doing online. We want to be there, but we have no idea how to do it. And I started seeing the need for guidance and education around social media marketing, all of that. It's before Facebook ads, it's before even Facebook business pages. And I started doing workshops for designers and teams inside large organizations like IKEA. Also started working with tiny teams. I call them kitchen counter teams, 1 or 2 people around the kitchen island and help them get to, again, something we didn't call influencers yet, but was basically influencer marketing, content marketing, social media marketing. All these things didn't really have names yet. And as I was doing this, I was also really getting more clued into the innovation side of things, the tech side of things, and also what led women a lot of times to become entrepreneurs was a lot of times after becoming parents, not feeling like they had space in the corporate world anymore. Which again, I'm kind of cramming a lot of stories into like one,
No,
but
it's good.
that led me to do a survey that became viral in 2015, and that led me to start tech startup about democratizing mentorship and opportunities in the workplace. And later I closed it in COVID, started another agency, and earlier this year started my current business, Consider.
Oh my gosh, you've done it all. You've lived 100 lives, which is so
Uh,
exciting.
Pretty exhausting, I have to
Yeah,
say.
I was gonna say. I was gonna say. So talk to us about Curious Labs now and what you're basically or Consider Labs, excuse me, what that is, who it's for, and what the services involved in that are.
Thank you so much. So, Consider Labs was really kind of born out of an amalgamation of
Yeah.
everything. I don't know if you're ADHD, but I'm very ADHD. And for many years, I've had like the guilt of like jumping from thing to thing and even industry to industry every few years until I understood that actually I was just kind of crawling or collaging skills, and everything that I've done and everything that I've learned always came with me to my clients in the next step. So my last step before Consider Labs was Rooms and Words, which was a marketing and strategy agency for tech startups and founders and organizations, really born from my marketing experience and my experience as a founder, like really in the trenches for 5 years in the future of work field, which was very, very new when we started, and, an all female team. So it was, I really like learned how to do it when it's not so easy. And just as like a fun fact, we got our first client at Emerge at my startup, which was Meta, Facebook,
Oh my gosh,
before we
yeah,
before we even had any investment money. So I
incredible.
really learned how to do it, and that was
Yeah.
what I did in my agency. But while I was doing that, I was really in my comfort zone. I was having fun. I love working with organizations, with teams, with founders, but I was really, really missing the purpose that I had in my startup, because my startup was not only did I have the purpose of just learning so much every day, because as a startup founder, you gotta learn all the time. I also really started it with my co-founder out of like a social cause of like really democratizing opportunities in the workplace. And that I really missed. And I was doing a lot of pro bono with my agency, but it didn't like I wanted like the purpose to be more in the core of the business. And after I got divorced, long story, my mentor encouraged me to take a few months to write a book.
Okay.
I started writing the book, and the book was about how to find your way when you feel lost with the power of questions. And about 2 or 3 months into writing the book, it just dawned on me, it was like, when you have this realization and you just can't unsee it and you don't know how you didn't see it the minute before. And I was like, yes, this book is great. It will happen at some point. But this is actually a methodology that can help people, founders, businesses, teams right now. And I am actually much more excited about working with people through the methodology than writing this book right now,
Oh my gosh,
honestly.
yes. Yeah, yeah. You felt that calling and you're like, I've gotta chase this down." Are you a fan of Elizabeth Gilbert, Big Magic?
I am. And
And the
I'm
idea is kind of like the parasite that has to find the host, right? And if it sits on you and you don't do anything about it, it's like it might jump to the next person. And I think that's kind of the beauty of this curiosity, right? Of like how you followed that down these different roads and knowing, trusting yourself that, okay, the book will happen, but we're going to put it off to the side. But talk us through your framework of like what it means to be an inquisitive, curious person and how that serves you not only in your business but like in your life. Like this is a big
uh,
theme here, right?
totally. So I believe, we live in a very volatile, uncertain world. You don't need me to tell you that.
Mhm.
But I really see it. myself and my friends, like just in the world, and we see it, in news titles every day, how the more volatile and uncertain the world is, the more we as humans, and I think it's very basic, like I don't fault anyone for that, we crave human exclamation points. And you see it in elections, unfortunately, you see it in you see it in businesses, like we really kind of crave and flock towards like the big words like tall people. Sorry, I love tall people, even though I'm very short. Um,
You're
I
looking
might
for
be
that sign of
jealous.
stability. Yeah, you're looking
Yeah,
for
you're
that,
like
like, what's
this.
something I can anchor to?
Totally. But the more we do that, we actually just deepen the uncertainty and the volatility. And I really, really believe in the power of questions and actually leaning into uncertainty and getting closer to it, because I feel like when we get closer to questions and to curiosity, lovingly with empathy, right? Because it is very, very scary. But the more we get closer to questions, the more we get closer to ourselves and to our fellow humans. And I also believe that this is also very, very true in business, because what you resist persists, what you ignore and avoid and run away from is going to run after you. So I really believe that getting into the habit of asking question lovingly, gently, and you don't have to attack yourself with the big, scary, looming question that's like, behind in the back of your head, but actually getting into the habit of breaking it down to smaller questions that are more accessible is really, really, really helpful. And I believe business leaders that are going to look at questions not as a means to the next answer, but answers as the means of the next question. That's where innovation happens. That's where the competitive edge happens. That's where like true, really cool things happen. So that's what I help my clients do, whether they're tech corporates or whether they're creatives. And I also am really, really passionate about helping creatives and solopreneurs and people like my, past Kitchen Island clients actually get access to also frameworks and tools and just mindset things that big tech has, because why shouldn't
Yeah,
we all have it?
why not? It reminds me of improv comedy, like a yes and.
Yeah, totally.
Of kind of if we just keep going, again, to kind of what you just said really resonated with me of getting the answer, not just to know the answer, but as an answer as a way to beget the next question. So this is gonna be a funny self-referential, almost inside joke, but how I'm gonna ask you the question, how do we ask better questions?
I love this. So, yeah, it's like the eternal question. So, one of the frameworks that I do have is called STEP, because I really believe that it's all step by step, because I can recall so many times where I couldn't ask myself the big questions, and it would only almost be cruel to ask myself the big question, because it's so much, especially if you're not in the habit of it. So this framework actually helps you look at, S is start where you are, test the waters is T, and then there's like the edge and the path forward. And I actually also have a GPT that can help you do that if you want, just kind of a thought partner. Because what I love about GPT, and I have like a very love hate relationship with AI, but
Same.
what I love about it, yeah, is that it can trick us. And it's very hard to ask ourselves questions. So it can trick our brains into thinking someone else is asking us, which automatically makes it easier for us to answer, but also just follows this framework that you can also do without any AI. And it just takes a big, looming, scary dilemma and it breaks it into two, three, four different questions that are much more attainable. So I feel like the better question isn't necessarily the end all question, right? It's just the question that gets you to the next question.
It's like getting reps at the gym.
Exactly.
I'm constantly telling our team, we're getting reps doing this. The more we do it is the better we get at it. I can go back and listen to my first 10 podcast episodes and absolutely be squirming in my chair by how many filler words and how unsure I sounded and my voice isn't strong. And it's so funny because I think the question then was, is this even something that I want to do? Versus now I've been doing
Right.
it for 5 years. And now the question, it's this is it why the podcast exists is based on my own personal curiosity. It's
I love
conversations
it.
exactly like this is time dedicated every week for me to go ask things I'm curious about. And I'm sure your podcast is kind of something similar too. So tell us a little bit about how you've structured your show and as a questions master, how
Oh my
you
God.
how that informs your process because I've got to imagine it plays a big role.
The pressure is high. Um,
Hey,
I'm so inspired by you. Wow, you just said before that you're at episode 200 and something, right?
200 and something, yeah. I
Oh my
don't even know
God.
the number by the time this one comes out. But
So
it's really
I
the repetition has helped me a lot.
Yeah, it does. So I'm 3 years in with my podcast, and I just had my son, over the summer kind of upload all the show notes from the past 3 years into my blog, and I was like, "I don't even wanna know how many
Uh-huh,
episodes it
uh-huh.
comes into." So looks like work really started out of my own curiosity and also my fascination with the world of work. I felt so privileged when I was the founder of Emerge to get to play in this sandbox of future of work, because it's so fascinating to me. And when
Mhm.
we had to shut the startup down, I was like, I'm fine with it. Like I've done my internal work around this, but I also don't want to give up this piece of me or this interest just because it's not what I do every day. And the name comes out of this quote saying, I think opportunity is missed by many because it's dressed in overalls and looks like work. So I kind of
Love that.
agreed with it more when I started, and now I don't really agree. So I actually
Sure,
like it more because I feel like it's subversive to use it this
sure.
way. And it's just my playground to really, and it changes with each season, the angle that we go from, but to really kind of talk to interesting people and look at everything between life and work and people's life's work. Or you brought up Elizabeth Gilbert, so like calling the values. I love, I stalked you on Instagram and I love how your values really come into your content and you're not afraid to say your opinions and what you believe and what you feel. So it's been a real privilege. It's been really interesting because I've done like this like long format podcast for 3 years. And just recently I experimented with a private podcast where episodes were 10 minutes. And that was really fun also. It was called Couples Therapy for You and Your Business.
Oh, I
So
love that. Yeah.
that was like also because it was like only had one question: if your business were to take you to couples therapy, what would it be all about? And the limitation sometimes is like kind of, like a coffee, like a cafe angel, because it's like makes you like very sharp. So it was also interesting to explore that. And it's just like the funnest thing that I do, honestly, the
Ugh,
podcast.
okay, you and I are running on such parallel tracks because I'm always saying this is my biggest breakthrough of the last few years is realizing like I am in a relationship with the business. The business is not me. I am not it. It is its own entity. And we are in, sometimes we're doing great and
I
sometimes we
know.
can't seem to agree. Right. But then the other joke I make all the time, which is crass, but it's just I'm self employed. So I always say my boss is a bitch and I'm a terrible employee. So it's just like this
Felt
whole right? Do you know what I mean? It's like which I
totally.
say in jest, but what do you think of or what comes to mind when you are doing those like that relationship with your business and finding your own identity out of your work? But talk to me about that, what that's looked like for you and what's that's looked like for people you've worked with.
So for me, I think I had a very big wake up call during COVID. The time I was a startup founder was incredible. It was exciting. I learned a lot. It was like so much of who I am today is thanks to that. But I also drove myself to the freaking ground in so many ways, including health wise. I burnt myself out. And like I can't even start to to describe. And I remember a moment, and by the way, this has a lot to do with questions because I only allowed myself to ask the question, how much or how much more, or is it even, it doesn't make sense, only towards the end. And even then, I remember hearing this question in my brain and not allowing myself to ask it, but a question that I could ask, and this goes back to like gentle, loving questions was when will I be ready to ask myself this question? And that's also a valid question. Then COVID came. We were supposed to close a 3.5 million round in March 18th, 2020. That
Oh
did
my
not
goodness.
happen. And I found myself actually understanding that the responsible thing to do would not to take another small investment in hopes that something will happen. And I don't know, maybe then this investment will only go into closing the company. I didn't feel like that was fair. I felt like the responsible thing was to shut the business. But what I didn't expect was a huge identity crisis. I really did not leave a lot in my identity outside of the startup in those 5 years. Like, thank goodness I was a mother. So that was a big part. But those are the two things that existed basically, motherhood and the
And
business.
business.
And it took a long time to work through that. And I'm very, very grateful to have started going to coaching in November 2019. So really, really close, like just a few months before that. That really helped me work through that. And actually, a few years later, I wrote like in a startup group about like they had like failure months, and I described the failure of closing Emerge. And my coach was really mad at me. She said, like, not only do I think closing, like taking the decision to shut it down, the startup was one of your biggest successes in life, I actually also think that it's one of my biggest successes as a coach. So, and I actually, today I see
Yeah, you see
where,
it.
where she
Yeah.
came from. And it's really interesting because I have been an entrepreneur for many years before that, but only after that did I learn how to have different pieces to my identity and not to go all in, go all in a healthy way, but also leave parts that are just for you. And for me, it was shocking and gratifying and amazing to see in my next business after that how, in my first business ever, for me to actually be in my comfort zone, actually have boundaries, actually take 2 hours for lunch every single day and not take, Zoom calls after 8 p.m. or something like that. I made the most money and I had the most fun. So that was really shocking, and it was something that I really feel so deeply about. It's also one of the things that got me to train as a coach nowadays. I'm almost done. And
Yay.
it really comes into me working with teams and founders, both startup founders and creatives, because it's about not only working on the business, but structuring the business in a way that structures towards you being closer with yourself, not going further from yourself and closer to burnout, basically.
Oh my gosh. And I think this is such a course correction from what we lived through, which was kind of the girl boss era of entrepreneurship, of
Totally.
making everything look so easy and reaching these insane financial thresholds and then selling out programs in 24 and just kind of this toxic in its own way kind of mentality. Okay, entrepreneurs, this one is for you. You know, I'm all about making your brand work for you, and this is where Sticker Giant comes in. They get it. Whether you're a small business, a creative freelancer, or someone just starting out, Sticker Giant wants to help you tell your stories with custom stickers and labels. They really make your products look pro, your packaging pop, and your brand stick in people's minds, literally. So if you're ready to take your brand to the next level, visit stickergiant.com and become part of the KMA community by using code KMA Podcast 25 at checkout on stickergiant.com to get 25% off your first order. See how they can help you bring your ideas to life. You definitely won't regret it. Sticker Giant, your partner in creating brag-worthy branding. Talked about something really briefly before we started recording, which really just got me going a million miles an hour already, because I'm like, oh, I've never heard this explained this way, which is kind of coming back to self. And I won't steal your thunders because I want you to say it. But talk to me about how that's been a guiding force for you recently, and where your curiosity lies within that theme.
Yeah. Oh my God. I'm so excited about this because I am so curious about it. I actually wrote on Threads, I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago, that this is taking me back to wanting to sit on like an archive or library floor and leaf through pages and like Xerox stuff and, cut and paste and collage like stuff. Like it's
Full
really
research
taking me
mode.
to
Yeah.
age 17. I was such a nerd. So we spoke about self-loyalty, and It's, you know how sometimes something is so apparent in your life and everybody sees it except for you?
Mhm.
So when I closed my startup, one of the things a friend, fellow founder friend told me was that she is really proud of me for staying true to myself through it, because the startup world is cutthroat, and especially if you're a female founder, especially when we were like having to do a lot of market education and face a lot of bias. And I did stay very true to my values. Nowadays, I look back and I also say, like, I wish I would, or, I don't really believe in regret, but like, I learned from that to also stay true to not only my values, which is super important, into who I am and to my personality, and stay silly, I'm wearing a pink dress, like, I don't think listeners can see, but also stay true to my timeline, which is like something that we just discussed. And recently, it started popping up again because I remember hearing it from her in 2020. And then recently, in the past like 3 to 6 months, I've started to really notice that people keep telling me this in conversations and coaching, either telling me, kind of recognizing my self loyalty or asking how they can be self loyal. And this has to do with, like, I went through family and community estrangement and my divorce. So it comes to light there, or, in how I build my business, or it comes out like when I talk to clients about how they're building their business. But it just reached like this turning point, or this tipping point, where like suddenly I realized, oh, I've been hearing this a lot. And this actually has so much to do with introspection and asking yourself questions and leading with self curiosity. And I always say, like, I say radical introspection, ruthless empathy, or vice versa. So it really has to do with like building your kind of steel core in order to allow you to be self in the world, in order to allow you to like show up as who you want to be, or who you really, really are. So I'm still kind of exploring this, and I'm looking at different philosophies and religions and cultural, references, because I just love, getting, songs, whatever, comics. Like, I
Sure,
just love
sure.
getting, all of these
Oh, we are
things.
so the same. Yeah, we're so the same in that way. And I think what's interesting about the concept of self-loyalty is it feels like a nice pendulum swing from self-care. Oh, I've heard self-care and this phrase self-care.
Yeah.
I mean, every single major brand, right? They have a kiosk, and at the end of your end cap at your department store, it's the self-care aisle. It's like, bleh, like that
The
terminology is so
consumerism
yucky.
aisle. Yeah.
It is, exactly, because to me it's distilled and packaged this idea that if I put a face mask on, then my problems have gone away. Versus
Yeah.
self-loyalty feels more like, okay, what would it mean to be loyal to myself? What would it mean to be what are the things that would bring me back to center and allow me to be in a place where I could have those strong opinions loosely held. I could have that strong
Yeah. I love
sense of
this.
self, but and be able to know that someone else or somebody else's opinion isn't a threat to my own self-concept, but an opportunity to learn more about myself and to open myself up to another way of doing things or another way of looking at something because it's not that this is how I interpret it, at least is like it's not someone's like if you have strong self-loyalty, you're then unthreatened by other people's
So,
stuff.
so true. So true. I love this saying, strong opinions loosely held. And I was recently thinking about how it can also be strong vision, loosely held, or strong dreams loosely held. And as entrepreneurs, there's so much instability. There's so much, that's just the nature of it. And we can talk about how 9 to 5 is also kind of an illusion of stability, but it's still a thing. And I think when you have both your self loyalty, so you know what's the core of you and what you can be loyal to, what you can come back home to, but also you know what's the self of your business. So you're much more free to experiment and to play with crazy visions, because and to hold them loosely. You are free to experiment and then to let go of them if it doesn't work, because you have something to come back home to. And it's exactly the opposite of self care in its consumerist capitalistic meaning, but it's true self care
Mhm.
in the sense that you don't. you don't go further away from yourself. And this is also something that I've learned in the past 6 years through coaching. So in the method that I'm studying and I've been coached in, it's called the Satya method. It was developed by Natalie Ben David like 22 years ago, I think, or between 20 and 30 years ago. I don't remember. But one of the key things that I've learned that was very hard for me to learn is that you actually can't be generous if you're not generous to yourself. Then it's not generosity, it's
Ooh.
people
Ooh.
pleasing.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
can't be a good listener if you're not listening to yourself. It's
Mhm.
superficial. Like,
Mhm.
it's very nice, it's very polite, it's not sustainable. It will actually drain you and it just won't last. So, actually being generous from your self loyalty. So, that means being generous to both yourself, first and foremost to yourself, and then to the other person. Being a good listener out of your self loyalty. So, listening to yourself, to your body, to your breath, to anything that goes on, any red flags, your intuition, right? Your gut. That is that is the true generosity, I believe.
Mhm. Oh, I've felt that so strong this year. I mean, I can think of a few instances in which my m I also am very interested, and I wonder if this is part of the self-loyalty concept as well, as, like, intellectually knowing versus emotionally feeling. And I'm the kind of person that can intellectualize a lot of things. I can see the problem and say, "Oh, I did this because I am this way, or because my habits are this, or because this person reacted in this type of way." And I can see that on paper, I was treated unfairly. Okay, that's not great. But the difference and the contrast between I intellectually know that that's the case, but I emotionally do not feel, you have like a client interaction go sideways, and you're like, okay, I know that I wasn't in the wrong, but then why is my body like, ugh. You know what I mean? Like, why am I having this feeling of like, "Oh, everything I do is shit and everyone hates me," because this one interaction that I intellectually know is not proof of that, is somehow, like, emotionally feeling not rectified or not solved, you know what I mean? And so
I
that
exactly know.
contrast. Yeah, is this the stuff you're studying or what?
Yeah, yeah. Are you an eldest daughter by any chance?
Yes, how did you know?
At this point, like any entrepreneur, any woman entrepreneur, I hear this from, like, they're 95%, they'll be an eldest daughter. Me too. We just recognize each other. It's something trauma bonding or something.
Mhm.
So, yes, that resonates so much. And I also feel like I've been raised to be a brain with a
Yes.
vehicle of body. So, very, very
Sure.
deep feeling always, but everything had to catch up to the brain. And also, everything that wasn't the brain wasn't rewarded and it wasn't, so it also becomes like the
Prioritized.
performative piece, right?
Sure.
So I'll go one step further and I'll say there's intellectually knowing, there's emotionally knowing or feeling, and then there's the physical sensing, the felt sense. And this is something that exists in many different methodologies and schools of thoughts,
Mhm.
including somatics, Buddhism, and as a religion, many, many different things. And yes, also very much the methodology that I'm studying. And we say that actually emotions are an interpretation of a group of felt senses in your body. For
Mm.
me, this was groundbreaking.
Mhm.
I really didn't like it in the beginning.
Mhm.
It was very hard to me to get back in touch with my body. I have autoimmune diseases since I was a kid. So there's like this kind of sense of betrayal from my body. And a lot of
Sure.
times people there's like, we didn't used to be in a really good relationship. So why should I listen to it? And
Mm.
the more, the worse the relationship became, the louder my body had to shout. Like during my startup years, it became quite loud for me to actually start
Yeah.
looking at it, and listening to it at first, like very, very begrudgingly, and
Yeah.
then and then actually gratefully. So yes, this is a huge piece. This is probably the biggest piece of it. And this was also, I hate this word, but this was the biggest unlock for me. Like
Yeah.
really, really hearing this language, because it's a language, and it's the first language we have as human beings before we start speaking, before we start verbally using language, right?
I feel like maybe you had a similar scenario to me then of like when the intellectual wasn't satisfying me in a way, the addictive brain kind of takes over and says like, well, I'm going to just like sink my teeth into the next most interesting thing because
Right.
if I were to quiet this part, like turn, like if they're on a switchboard, right? And I have to turn the volume down on the intellectually knowing, then all of a sudden the emotionally feeling is going to get a lot louder. And that part was too scary. So it's
It's
like,
not
well, if
fun
I
to
just
stay with it. Yeah.
yeah, if I just keep making it louder on the intellectually knowing, like what I know and what I know I'm good at and what I know I can do and how I know I can help people and how I know like okay, like this is feeling good and then suddenly it's like what are we running from?
Yeah, and it can
What is this
masquerade
coming
as, like,
from?
a lot of really valuable things, like helping
Yeah.
people,
Building a
curiosity, right?
business, having a
I love
team,
curiosity,
growing like
making
social. Yeah.
money,
Yeah.
but we have to ask ourselves, speaking about questions, where is it coming from? If it's coming from good places, then amazing, but if is are we just not able to sit in the suck and, breathe into it, listen, then it will come back to haunt us because we live in this body. It's not going anywhere. If it's going somewhere, we're going there too. Like,
Yeah.
bad news,
You don't have a choice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think this is such a timely conversation because at the time we're recording this, it's November. I always say like November is the Sunday scaries of the year because December's fun. Like December is just like, okay, it's a party. Like it's
Yeah.
holidays, people are checked out. But I think November for me, it's dark outside, it's cold. I mean, I'm in Southern California, so it's not that cold. But it's kind of this whole it's that bookmark at the end of the year that says, "What did I even accomplish?" It's that weird,
Yeah.
like, retrospective, like, "Okay, we set out all these goals in January. It's now November. I'm in the last 10 minutes of my, year here." How do you help people navigate that kind of feeling of doom? But not to be so dramatic, but kind of the I think a lot of eldest daughters probably feel this way, which is feeling that the things that you've accomplished don't stick out as much as the things that you didn't, or, like, the things that you thought you
Yeah.
did wrong. Maybe I'm opening a whole can of worms here with, like, 5 minutes left of the podcast.
Totally. We can speak just about that for like
Yeah.
2 hours,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
at least, and probably like just a season.
Sure, sure.
But this is very timely because it is November, and I was just doing today like a postmortem on my latest launch. And it's so easy to not see everything that went well because that's just, especially eldest daughter to eldest daughter. What went well is just, of course, it should have gone well. Like, what did you plan for it to
There's no
fail?
other there yeah, there's no other expectation there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and what didn't go well, even incrementally, is like a huge disappointment. So,
Mhm, mhm.
I totally get that, but I think first of all, getting into like on a tinier, more incremental way, getting into habit of celebrating anything, tiny
Yeah.
things. And I don't know how it is for you. I currently don't have an in-house team. I had a team in my previous business. It was kind of a remote global team and I loved it. And I was really into celebrating every little tiny thing that they accomplished. And that taught me to celebrate my things too,
Yourself.
just because I
Mhm.
had to role model it, right? And because I also had a team full of eldest daughters, high achievers. So I had to do it for myself, for them to like actually believe me. And that really, it's kind of a force of habit right now. The
Mhm.
other thing, beyond questions and beyond, we sit with things and we look at the strategy, and a lot of like a very, very big piece of what I do, especially with solopreneurs and creatives and smaller business owners, is going from reactive to proactive. So a lot of becoming proactive is also being retrospective and also understanding what to do with it. And it's going from a mindset of things happening to me to actually seeing how I happen to things and how,
Yes,
how we
yeah.
deal with things. So we can talk about that a long time. But also, in like a morbid sense, the sense of doom and gloom, it's kind of a death, right? The end of a year
Sure.
or
Sure.
the end of a launch, or
Sure.
ends are scary. And it's no coincidence that we have so many children's tales and fables, right? About death, because that's the big doomy, gloomy thing that we're dealing with. That's the biggest question we're not dealing with every day. And I think part of it, and that's why I really see everything as like kind of it's all the
It's all
same. The business, the
connected.
spiritual
Yeah.
is I know it sounds weird, but kind of getting closer to questions, getting closer to uncertainty, getting closer to endings and to death. Sorry if it sounds too
No, I
morbid.
love this. No, I like
And
it.
seeing how everything is a cycle, right?
Yeah.
Every
Yeah.
single thing is a cycle. So out of the death, that's where life blooms.
Mhm.
And let's look at it. Let's get closer to it. Let's look what in this death would actually help us make life bloom better in a more comfortable way, in a more creative way, whatever it is that we're looking at for the next season. And how amazing it is that it will be next season in just like 2 months or so.
I love it. This is what a beautiful way to look at that, because I think, again, I kinda get stuck in the slog of it. I'm a summer baby. I love the summer. I love warm. I love happy and colorful and bright, and as soon as it starts to get gloomy, I just go, "Oh." It just absolutely I flip a switch. But this was a really, like, I think, hopeful conversation of, like, how to look at that and how to get closer to those questions. So thank you for all of that. I think this
Thank you
was
so
a
much.
fun conversation. Absolutely. Please give us an opportunity to connect with you, follow you, get more information, find your podcast. Can you please plug yourself, Vivi?
Of course, I would love that. Thank you so much. So I'm Chedva KL, that's Chedvakl on both Instagram and Threads. I am obsessed with Threads.
Me
I don't
too.
know how to tell you, like, I used to be a Twitter baby in like the early 2008, 2010, before it became like a bro toxic thing,
Yeah.
like swamp. So I feel like Threads has a little bit of that vibe. So I love it. But also on Instagram, I'm on LinkedIn, Chedva Ludmir. My website is consider.club. Yes, club is a domain suffix. So you can
Cool.
find everything there. And you can sign up to my newsletter that has a very funny name. It's called You're Gonna Want to Sit Down for This.
Love that.
And you can find my podcast there too, or on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcast. It's called Looks Like Work. And we're just about to embark on season 4 in the new year. So I'm really excited for that.
So exciting. Thank you so much for today's conversation. I really, really enjoyed it. And guys, if you're listening and you loved it, make sure you leave a comment. You can comment on Spotify now, which is actually quite fun. Leave a comment on YouTube, follow us anywhere you find the podcast, and send it to a friend. I feel like this conversation, especially for the eldest daughters, is really going to hit home. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much for having me. It was so fun. And it was also so, like, I really felt like I found a kindred spirit.
Oh, completely. There's some people you just click with, you know what I mean? And this felt like I felt like we were starting to open a can of worms. I was like, "Oh, this is gonna be a 4-hour episode."
I
So
managed it
more to
expertly.
come. More to come, more to come.
Totally.
Thanks everyone for listening. We will catch you next time. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.